Breaking news from around your world on this Friday, July 20th, 2018. I'm Larry Rice. Divers are searching for 4 people still missing after a duck boat packed with tourists capsized in high winds on a lake in southwest Missouri, killing at least 13 people. The Missouri State Highway Patrol said 14 people survived, including 7 who were injured when the Ride the Ducks boat sank on Table Rock Lake in Branson Thursday evening. Patrol divers found 2 more bodies early Friday, raising the death toll from 11 to 13. Stone County Sheriff Doug Rader said late Thursday that stormy weather likely made the boat capsize. The National Weather Service said thunderstorms kicked up winds of 50 to 65 miles an hour in the Branson area Thursday evening. A severe thunderstorm warning was issued for Branson shortly before the boat tipped over. Passengers on a nearby boat described the chaos as the winds picked up and the water became rough. 4 adults and 3 children were taken to a hospital. 2 of the adults remain in critical condition. The other victims were treated for minor injuries. Dive teams from several law enforcement agencies are assisting in the effort. A Korean court convicted ousted President Park Geun-hye of additional charges and sentenced her to 8 more years in prison Friday, raising her total jail term to 32 years. Televised live, the Seoul Central District Court meted out the guilty verdict on the 66-year-old and ordered her to forfeit nearly $3 million. Prosecutors had demanded an additional 15 years. Friday's sentence adds to the 24-year jail term she's been serving on 18 counts of corruption in a nation-rocking influence peddling scandal that led to her ousting last year. She was arrested in late March, 3 weeks after she was removed from office by the Constitutional Court. In early January, prosecutors indicted Park on charges that include bribery, embezzlement, and loss of state funds for illegally accepting 3.5 billion won from the National Intelligence Service between May 2013 and September 2016. She's also been indicted for interfering in the then-ruling Sanuuri Party's candidate nominations for the 2016 general elections. She was not present at Friday's trial, as she's been boycotting all her trials, which she said are politically motivated, accusing the judiciary and prosecution of being unfair. North Korea said Friday that an August reunion of Korean families separated by war may not happen if South Korea doesn't immediately return some of its citizens who arrived in the South in recent years. The 2016 arrival of a group of 12 female employees from a North Korean-run restaurant in China has been a source of contention between the rival Koreas. North Korea has accused South Korea of kidnapping them, while South Korea says the group decided to resettle at their own will. North Korea has often used the women as a reason to rebuff South Korea's repeated request to allow elderly citizens split during the 1950-53 Korean War to reunite with each other temporarily. The women's arrival happened when South Korea was governed by a conservative government, which took a tough stance on the North's nuclear program. South Korea's current liberal president, Moon Jae-in, wants to expand ties with North Korea, but repatriating any of the women would be a delicate matter. As many experts say, relatives of those who decide to stay in the South will likely face reprisals by the North Korean government. Sweden is fighting its most serious wildfires in decades, including wildfires above the Arctic Circle, prompting the government to seek help from several other European nations. Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven said Friday his government is working every minute to get necessary resources to the hundreds of firefighters and emergency workers fighting some 50 blazes, burning more than 50,000 acres. The fires are mostly in central and western Sweden, but also in the north, above the Arctic Circle. Sweden has received assistance, including water-bombing planes, helicopters, and staff from Italy and Norway. Denmark, Germany, France, and Lithuania have also pledged to help. Temperatures in Sweden and its Nordic neighbors, Finland and Norway, have surpassed 32 degrees Celsius, about 90 degrees Fahrenheit this week, drying out the region's brush and forests, making them highly flammable. Unbowed by swirling criticism of his summit encounter with Vladimir Putin, President Donald Trump swiftly invited the Russian president to the White House this fall for a second get-together. Putin's ambassador to the U.S. said Moscow is open to discussing such a meeting. Pundits said a White House meeting would be a dramatic extension of legitimacy to the Russian leader, who's long been isolated by the West for activities in Ukraine, Syria, and beyond, and is believed to have interfered in the 2016 presidential election that sent Donald Trump to the presidency. No Russian leader has visited the White House in nearly a decade. Trump asked National Security Advisor John Bolton to invite Putin, and those discussions are already underway, according to Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Trump earlier had tweeted that he looked forward to our second meeting as he defended his performance at Monday's summit, in which the two leaders conferred on a range of issues, including terrorism, Israeli security, nuclear proliferation, and North Korea. The Interior Department Thursday proposed sweeping changes to the Endangered Species Act that could make it easier for roads, pipelines, and other construction projects to get approved in environmentally sensitive areas. Republicans have argued that the law in question, which helped bring such animals as the bald eagle and the Yellowstone grizzly bear back from near extinction, holds back economic development. The proposals, which would mark the biggest changes to the protections in decades, also would make it harder to move species up from threatened status to endangered, a more serious designation. David Bernhardt, the Deputy Secretary of the Interior Department, said the proposals would merely streamline the 1973 law and the regulatory process without eroding protections. Environmental activists said the changes would put some species at greater risk of extinction. The Trump administration said that it had reunited 364 of more than 2,500 migrant children ages 5 or older with their families after they were separated at the U.S.-Mexico border. A judge gave the federal government until July 26 to reunite all of the children with their parents. In a court filing, the Trump administration said of the 1,607 parents eligible for reunification, 719 have final orders of deportation. Lindsay Toskolowski, executive director of Immigrant Defenders Law Center, told NBC News, "That's a pretty horrifying statistic. We've had such limited communication with parents, and it was difficult to know where they were in their case." Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Friday imports of Japanese automobiles pose no threat to U.S. national security, vowing to convince President Trump not to impose tariffs that could damage the global economy. At a news conference to mark the end of the parliamentary session, Abe said imports of our nation's automobiles and auto parts have never damaged U.S. national security and will not do so in the future. Washington launched an investigation in May into whether imported vehicles were a threat to national security. Trump has repeatedly threatened to impose tariffs as a key part of his economic message, repeatedly lamenting the U.S. auto sector trade deficit, particularly with Germany and Japan. Abe said Japanese companies built some 3.8 million cars annually in the United States, more than double the number of vehicles shipped there from Japan. Abe went on to say, trade restrictions will not benefit anyone, and we will keep explaining that to the U.S. and work closely with them to ensure those tariffs are not imposed. President Trump on Thursday said he was not thrilled with the Federal Reserve's decision to raise interest rates twice so far this year. The Fed, led by Trump appointee Chairman Jerome Powell, also planned to hike rates further as employment and inflation data improve. Trump told CNBC's Joe Kernan in an interview, "I am not happy about it." Trump said the hikes put the U.S. at a disadvantage because other central banks weren't raising their rates. Critics said the rare presidential weigh-in violated the tradition of Fed independence. News of Trump's comments were followed by declines for U.S. stocks, the dollar, and federal bond yields. The White House said President Trump was not trying to interfere in Fed decisions. Police in Luxembourg have added 2 Tesla electric cars to their fleet, hoping that their rapid acceleration capacity will help them nab more criminals and speed offenders while also trimming the tiny country's carbon emissions. The purchase of the 2 Tesla Model S cars, which can accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in seconds, is part of a pilot project to move some 10% of the cars on Luxembourg's roads toward electric and hybrid vehicles. The UK Space Agency is looking for a catchy name for its ExoMars rover being developed for use in a mission set for 2020. The agency launched a competition Friday to find the best name for the rover, a key UK contribution to the European Space Agency's Mars voyage. The winner gets the chance to take 3 guests on a tour of the Airbus facility in Stevenage, about 30 miles north of London, where the rover is being built. The rover is a 6-wheeled robot that will search for evidence of past or even present life on Mars. The contest is open to residents of countries belonging to the European Space Agency. And that's your update for this Friday, July 20th, 2018. I'm Larry Rice. Thanks so much for supporting this podcast with your generous donations and for listening. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend.